Um, thank you very much to the organising party for inviting Cancer Council and for me to be able to present to you. I would like to start with acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land of which we're meeting today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I'd also like to pay my respects to elders both past and present. Here today, I'm actually talking on behalf of Cancer Council from all the states and territories. So Cancer Council is Australia's largest community-funded organisation. So we have a focus on uniting the community to engage with support and provide support. We're investing in research, and I know today is actually Australia's biggest morning tea actual day, and if anybody has noticed it or heard and seen the media around that. But that is important because it is helping us with funds. We are actually 98% community funded. We are not government supported. So our work is very dependent on the support we get from the community. So I'm here today to actually introduce you to some of the specific programs, and I'll just give you a snapshot of the Cancer Support Services Division of Cancer Council New South Wales. But as you will hear, some of the programs I talk about, Cancer Council New South Wales delivers nationally. So the central point of contact for all our services is the 13 11 20 number, and that's actually a national number. So I appreciate probably most of you are actually here from New South Wales, but if you were in Brisbane, 13 11 20 would take you to Cancer Council Queensland. So here in 13 11 20, and I have my colleague with me today, and you've probably seen us out at our table. So Yvonne and I have been talking to many of you and talking about our publications, etc. You've seen that 13 11 20 is on all of our information because it is the point where you can actually speak to an oncology health professional. Many of them are oncology nurses, whether it's pharmacy, radiographers, that have engaged with this program and are employed Monday to Friday. We have a limit of staff being a community organisation, and I just have to name it that quite often we're hearing about people saying that we couldn't get on, and we are just imploring you to please leave a message. We will get back to you within that sort of 24, 48 hours, but we are limited by the team that we can actually provide on the phone. The cost is just of a local call from wherever you are in New South Wales. And we are taking 12,000 calls a year, so we're actually speaking to the general public. But thinking of this audience today, we are speaking to people who have just received a diagnosis of a brain tumour. We're often talking to the carers and families and friends. They're the ones that will pick up the phone and dial that number and make contact. Usually to look for information, our written publications, but quite often that story might evolve to a 45-minute, 50-minute phone call where you actually get the opportunity to speak to the consultant about the impact of the diagnosis, clarify information. You've just come from the treatment centre where you've been given quite extensive information about your diagnosis, but to have that anonymous capacity to sit on the phone and just explore what you understand can be a really valuable process and something that the 13 11 20 team dedicate their time to. And through working with them, you will then be referred to internal programs that I'm going to touch on, but as well as that, referral back to some of the significant contacts within your own cancer treatment centres that you might not have heard about as yet, but also to other programs that are operating in the community. So 13 11 20 is the number you all have to remember, please. The other key resource, and these are actually now national, better use of the charity dollar, is that Cancer Council New South Wales actually develops and reviews every 2 years all those publications, the booklets you saw on our table. We actually have 64 resources, so we have dedicated many of the major cancer treatment sites to independent booklets, but all the support material, as you would have seen, the radiation therapy and the chemotherapy as the treatment modalities, but as well as those psychosocial support areas. So the format we're now providing, again, trying to improve our reach across New South Wales, across Australia. So for people like you with a diagnosis, for those here with a diagnosis or carers, can actually ask for a printed book if that's the way you like to get your information. You can go online to the Cancer Council website and download a PDF. We now have most of the publications where you can transfer them into an ebook format. But also through the web pages, the Cancer Council web pages, there are different types of publications formats that are there. And one of our most recent successes in bringing in a different level of information provision has been the development of our podcasts. And those podcasts have the gift of being led by a lady called Julie McCrossan. Many would know her as a comedian, but she is also a woman that is quite open about her cancer diagnosis. And she interviews, whether it's health professionals, psychosocial support, or consumers, about a plethora of topics, whether it's just what is cancer all about, through to sexuality, intimacy, carers. There's a complete library of podcasts that you can actually download onto your iPhone and listen to at any time, but they're from the Cancer Council website. So moving into our peer support area, which is my passion. As you heard, I'm this coordinator of the support group program, but we have an area where we call it the peer support. So we have lots of evidence-based and research around the value of the peer voice and the power of the peer voice, often in a group situation. So the online community is peer support at its maximum. It's available 24/7. It is an online space where you can go on at any time. 2 o'clock in the morning for carers is often a regular one that we will see when you're not sleeping. Put out your story. You can read other stories that are there from other patients and carers, particularly people living with brain tumours, and connect with those stories, value add to them. The program is actually moderated by health professionals based in at the Cancer Council. So all the programs I'm talking about are moderated or managed by health professionals, although what we're working with is the power of your peer voice. Quite often with referrals to our peer support program, we recognise when we actually assess that caller, and that's why we have health professionals doing that, looking at our programs, we recognise that sometimes individuals need a little bit more than going straight into a group space. Sometimes your needs are actually higher needs, and what we can do, Cancer Council provides a subsidised one-on-one counselling program, and we refer out to an external counsellors, and we actually fit the cost of that. There is a gentle means test that is discussed, so if you feel you can contribute, then that's appreciated, but if it is a case that you know you can't contribute, and as Liz highlighted, the cost and the burden of the brain tumour journey is huge, and so quite often those counselling services will be fully funded. They can be face-to-face and all over the telephone. So again, we're trying to reach everywhere in New South Wales. This one is dedicated to New South Wales alone. We are trying to reach everyone, and therefore we have quite a few of the counsellors that work well in the telephone environment. Our flagship or our oldest peer support program is what we now call Cancer Connect, and we have 2 dedicated volunteers who have had a brain tumour experience. So the program operates or works on a one-on-one telephone support. It is for newly diagnosed or people wanting to understand or they're undertaking different cancer treatment, and they want to be able to speak to somebody who's walked in their shoes. That's where the peer space comes in. It's somebody who will understand some of the issues, what it's like to talk to your kids about cancer, etc., and share those. So they're not giving advice, they're not giving treatment recommendations, they're sharing their story with you to provide that peer support. And we are also now matching, and you'll hear with some other programs, issues around survivorship, the new normal that is happening for many cancer patients as their treatments improve, even though, like many of you in the room, you're on that maintenance, you're on some level of treatment, but you're trying to carry on with your normal lives. So the program has people who are recovered from their similar cancer diagnosis, so we do match whether it's a brain tumour with brain tumour or breast and breast, we match those. over the phone, and these volunteers are actually given a 2-day training program and then supported by the health professional who actually does the matching. So telephone support group is another means of peer support, and this is my passion. This is one of the programs that I actually co-facilitate. And so we actually have a dedicated brain tumour support group. So for anybody, and I didn't bring my pad up, I've had a list of little handouts. Over at the table, the Cancer Council table, we actually have a DL card that talks about the brain tumour specific. So it's actually run twice a month on a Monday. And it's always between 1:30 and 2:30. I'm getting a smile there. Are you a participant and I don't know? I've actually already heard a voice in the audience that I recognised from group because we don't see you. So it was quite special for me to now meet that person today. So we have a maximum of 7 people on the phone, and they do come from anywhere across Australia. With the 2 trained facilitators. It's a great program for bringing the peer voice together where people are isolated, and people can be isolated in the city by their particular diagnosis or by a desire for anonymity about their cancer in their community. We also, as you can see in the final bullet point, we actually provide the telephone support group program for 6 other dedicated services, as well as providing a life after loss bereavement group that happens as a 6-week consecutive closed group. But significantly there is the carers group. So as well as for those of you who have had a diagnosis of a brain tumour, for those who are carers, the carers group also, it operates on a Wednesday, 1:30 till 2:30. If you take one of the cards from the table, it's actually got the 1300. So even though I talk about 13, 11, 20 as being the be-all and end-all, you can actually dial straight into our program and leave a message to our dedicated voicemail. So please have a look at and pick up one of those flyers as you go through. My other area of strong interest is the Cancer Support Group program, and I've heard a couple of mentions of the face-to-face support groups that are happening in the community. Cancer Council's done a lot of work. We actually funded some research into the effectiveness of support groups, and out of that we recognise the importance of us supporting the leaders. So we provide leader training. What we're looking for is creating or trying to ensure a safe environment in the community when people come together. As for many of you will hear, and particularly for health professionals, we can sometimes hear bad stories, and what we're trying to ensure is that if the leaders understand how to manage challenges, how to set a good group agreement and manage, they will get good discussion and healthy discussion and sharing of the peer voice in the support group setting. As you can see there, I found that my support group was as useful, safe place to express my emotions and experiences without having to censor myself to protect the feelings of other people. Both with the TSG, the telephone group, and the face-to-face groups, we often hear that, where people will say in the group space, I really can't tell my family any more about my story. I know that they're over listening to me, and this is the space where I can just get it off my chest. So it is the value of the telephone and the face-to-face group programs. To access any of your support groups across New South Wales, again, 13, 11, 20, have a database of over 2,500 services. There's 285 support groups, general support groups, but there's quite a number of dedicated groups, and I can see one of the leaders from the Lifehouse Brain Tumour Support Group down the front here. But at some of the major cancer treatment centres, particularly where there are brain tumour programs, the health professionals are actually delivering face-to-face support groups. Now I'm moving into the practical support. We're done with peer support. We're into what practical and financial. And it's probably an area that's become the busiest for Cancer Council because it is such a needy. Following on from Liz's recognition of the cost of cancer, these programs have been developed recognising how Cancer Council can try and improve that burden for you. So one of them is the pro bono program. It too now operates out of New South Wales but nationally, And as a pro bono program, it has engaged with with professionals, whether they're lawyers, financial planners, financial counsellors in the community, who actually voluntarily give their time to our referrals. So there is a means test to it, a gentle means test that happens internally, that we can then refer you on to a lawyer in the community closest to you, particularly around that time when you look at, oh, okay, here I am with this diagnosis, it's life-threatening and I need to get quite often people refer to, they've been told to get their affairs in order, but even for that, we should all have looked at having a will, having an enduring guardianship, having a power of attorney in place. And this program will actually refer you to lawyers that will get that package done for you, and that's free of charge. We also have the financial planning and small business accounting for people when they're talking about having to close down their own private business or they're unable to keep working, and so workplace advice. Within that financial area, Cancer Council, through its funds, remember 98% community funded, so some of those funds are going into what we now have is an emergency financial assistance. It's available for you for people living with a brain tumour. They are only one-off assistance of $350, but they are when somebody calls into 13 11 20 and is just burdened by, I've got another bill in, I've got my council rates due and I can't afford to pay this quarter, I just need some help. This is what the 13 11 20 team will refer you through to. And so it can look at those household bills, home help and food, Coles gift vouchers, fuels and taxi vouchers are provided. We do like it when we get a referral from a social worker, again, because that's helping us with that, just an assessment of your financial situation so that we know that the funds are going to those people that really need it. And as you can see there, 16 and 17, 2,500 people benefited from that money. 587,000 was given out just in that one financial year. We also have now financial counsellors, and for anybody who has had contact, Alka, who's there on the left, is who actually set up that program and is a qualified financial counsellor. The financial counselling is now also available over the phone. So originally it was dedicated, I think it was Nepean and Westmead that Alka used to go out to and be referred by social workers to do financial counselling, but we are now making it accessible to anybody with any cancer across New South Wales. But for you in this room, it is another program or service that is eligible for you. Still in that practical area, but there are again where we look at supportive care needs. Probably one of the biggest challenges that we hear about it when supportive care needs studies have been done over many years is the issue about transport to treatment, which often entails where do you park, or the challenges with no parking, as well as accommodation. So I've got another slide on that. So currently we are supporting people with travel. We now currently have 20 services set up using the Cancer Council vehicles and training volunteers. So that's quite significant to think about. Having somebody driving the car who actually understands that they're picking up somebody from their chemotherapy treatment, and what happens if they're sick in their car? How do they look after them? So we actually provide training for those people. We're also working with other transport programs in the community to enhance this program. And I will say that if you found that you've actually think that there isn't a transport service close to you to get you to your treatment, we are trying to encourage you to keep asking us for it, because that becomes part of our advocacy. If we have the numbers to say we've got a gap in a service, it's more power through our advocacy program to change a situation in New South Wales. And the same with accommodation. Low-cost accommodation Cancer Council has accommodation in many of the major treatment sites, and travelling to services is 2 centres for your radiation therapy and needing accommodation when you come down to Sydney is one of the things that the 13 11 20 team can refer you to our accommodation services, as well as now we have an engagement with Accor Hotels. So they're actually assisting with cheaper accommodation for people when they come to Sydney for treatment, or going out to regional centres. So any of the big major centres, whether it's Orange, or Bathurst, for example, you can actually get accommodation assistance when you've travelled from country areas. So that's the practical and financial area. The new area of work that I think we've touched on today is the area of survivorship for those people who are their treatment has stabilised their disease. There's no evidence of disease, and then they're in some ways feeling like they're nearly adrift. Well, what's next? We hope it might be a support group, but we also recognise that the place of good exercise and nutrition is getting more and more evidence for you to participate in. So we're calling this the Enriching Survivorship Program. So it is 8 sessions of 2 hours a session. And you can see the third bullet point down there. So we have specialist dietitians, yoga teachers, and trained peer facilitators. So these are people that have been through an experience of cancer and can share their new normal, can participate in this program that was giving them education and skill development. And you can see there's quite an emphasis on the exercise component of that program. Again, to get into that service is through what number? 20. Thank you. Thank you. In the survivorship area, one of the things that we've done to try and increase the reach to everyone, whether it's New South Wales or across Australia, is the development of our webinars. They are actually done with Redback, one of our teleconferencing companies in Sydney, and it provides online support for cancer survivors. So the word gets out about these webinars. Once you've registered, you're then in the loop for hearing about them, whether it is issues around caring for somebody about cancer, sexuality, intimacy. It's a panel that you actually see visually. You'll see a consumer share their story. You'll see a health professional, often the medical side, and you'll see one of the allied health professionals share their knowledge and awareness around the area or the topic. Again, if you go to the Cancer Council website, you will actually be able to look at, just put in webinar up in the search, at the top search bar, and you will actually see a full library of all the types of services. They run for about an hour, but you can actually skip through. If you decide you just want to go and listen to the psychologist and wonder what she had to say, you can tab through. So I would encourage you to do that. As the quote down the bottle, survival keeps on going. Every day brings a new challenge. I think it's both been a curse and a blessing. So when you've got people sitting in the community like that, we are actually trying to address that problem or that concern that people are having to try and get on without a lot of support, and our survivorship program does that. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. I'm open for question, but just to acknowledge 131120 is your central point of contact. The peer support program is a valuable area for you to feel normalised by your experience, practical and financial assistance, and the survivorship program. Thank you.